Welcome everybody to episode 22 of The Power of You. Bill and I are back in person here in New York City, and we're very excited to bring this next episode to you. So today, Bill, I would love to talk about attachments, right? And you might wonder, where has this topic come from, Natalie? Well, often, you know how we talk about growth all the time. And one thing that kind of came to me, it's been coming to me this week, and obviously always in the car on the way down, is around attachments. And while they are like part of our humanness to become attached to people, places, things, they also can limit or kind of stunt or hold us back when it comes to our growth and evolution, when we're attached to certain people, places, things. So I wanted to open the conversation today by talking a little bit more about attachments, what they are, the purpose that they serve, and why we maybe struggle to let things go as we move on to future chapters. So perhaps to open things up today, it'd be great to hear your take or your understanding of what attachments are.
It's an excess of love, really. So it's, too much of a good thing, basically. And what really works is not cutting it off to zero, but just dialing it back a little bit so that it doesn't feel like you're addicted and you're going to go away suffering without it, whatever the object of the attachment is. Mm-hmm. It could be winning a race, performing well on camera, keeping a marriage together. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Now, it's easy to say and hard to do, because we're talking about subconscious feelings bubbling up into the conscious and driving our behavior and taking us over. And it's almost like pain, You can, when you're not having it, you can theorize about how you're going to be tough and no matter how bad it feels. But then when it hits you, if it hits a certain level, it breaks through that illusion that you're Superman, Superwoman, and all of a sudden you just can't take it and you're screaming and so on and so forth. So, like, you lose a child. How are you ever going to recover from that? How do you ever recover from that? But you have to. You have to. How would you ever do that? Well, if you get to that point of wisdom about what the universe is, you know that you haven't lost them permanently. You'll get to see them again. They're not really gone. They got out of their car, their vehicle, and they're parked invisibly, but they're still there. You can even communicate with them under those conditions if you're open to it. Usually you try to communicate and there doesn't seem to be a response, and you figure, okay, that's foolishness, I'm never going to do that again. And within a day or so, you get a message, if you're open enough to even get it. And then you see that you can actually communicate, but I'm going off on a tangent here.
No, I think it's important points, right? So attachment is like the overflow of love, right? You started there. And I think that's true because, we can be attached, as you said, to many things, people, places, environments. It could be a job, it could be a friendship, it could be a relationship, a country. Like, there are so many things throughout our human experience that we become attached to. And in some way, it's healthy, right? You talked about children there, like your marriage. It's human of us. It's our humanness that creates these attachments. So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with creating attachments, but I think it's interesting because when we're growing and evolving into like a future version of ourselves, if we're, leveling up or leveling out, right? There are some things, people, places that can't come with us necessarily the whole way. And I think this is where our attachments can unknowingly kind of hold us back, because I kind of like to compare it to, say, a child, right, that's maybe a toddler, and it's got all these like toddler toys, right, and then it's growing into a little young person and it needs more age appropriate toys. But often, like, if we're using this analogy as adults, we don't want to let go of the old toys, but then we still want the new ones, right? And unfortunately, that's not how it works. We need to clear the room, or the child's bedroom, metaphorically, so to speak, in order to create the space for, the gifts, the people, the experiences, the environments that are now appropriate for who we are. And I think we can know that, or maybe know that if you listen to this, in logic, but it still feels very challenging when you're in that space. And this is where you said it's about the excess of love, right? And you started talking about, okay, how do you get yourself into a place where you don't need it, it's nice, or you have had a nice memory, create a bit more distance between it. How do you get yourself to a place that you can look back and remember fondly, feel warmly about it, but not let that limit you moving forward?
I've always practiced this internal mental, emotional process when something was seriously bothering me, of concentrating on the feeling of that need, that neediness, that longing, and being able to neutralize it. And it's very hard to explain to anybody else how to do it, but it starts with being alone and concentrating internally on what's bothering you, and envisioning being without that thing, giving it up, and then seeing what your own internal reaction to that is, which is, of course, going to be no, can't do that. But then staying with it and kind of dialoguing with yourself doesn't mean you need to use words, but mentally debating with yourself whether you could really deal with not having that thing. And it may be in the real world, it isn't even a matter of totally giving it up. It's a matter of reducing it, and even that's horrible, not acceptable. But in this mental practice that I do, I go all the way to, okay, what if I give it up entirely, and then whatever of it I get is going to be a bonus. And at some point, you feel that internal switch clicks over. And not only is it hard to explain, but I didn't know what the mechanism was, what was actually being done while I do that. And I just read an academic paper, neuroscience discovery, that what's involved are the Raphe cells in the brain, RAPHE, where you see mental activity in the Raphe cells right before this release from the bondage. And so so now it's a known scientific fact that you can overcome attachment by concentration, and what's happening involves the Raphe cells, which happen to be the cells that are involved in dreaming.
Yeah, so there's kind of a scientific piece behind releasing attachment, and it's something you've practiced, and it's hard to maybe put to words exactly what it is that you do, but I think just even hearing your thoughts there, I'm now starting to think about, okay, well, what is it I do, right? And I think I kind of imagine it like, say when you're connected, you've got that attachment, you're in that moment. It's almost like two batteries, like charging each other, right? But then as time goes on, perhaps though one battery goes dead and the other one is overflowing or brimming, if you like, and maybe it just doesn't match. It's not equal anymore. It doesn't feel the same. This can go for people, but it also can go for jobs, right? Once that you put all your energy in and it was mutually, like, it was charging charging you, it was charging each other, it was reciprocal. But then at some point in time, it starts to feel like I'm giving a lot here and I'm not getting the same back. I almost see it as, okay, you've kind of taken or extracted everything that you can from that situation. And when I say extracted, it's more like you've extracted the learning, you've extracted the growth, and it's not giving you back what it once perhaps gave you. And that, for me, is a sign that you've learned the lesson, you've taken the learnings, and it's time, right? It's time to move forward. But when I think about like an analogy, and I talk of us as batteries quite a lot, but it's almost like, no, like that attachment is like, rather than put my energy out into all these different things, I imagine almost taking it back into me. And like, that's not to say that you didn't love like the place, the person, the environment, you didn't value and cherish that attachment, but actually at some point you almost need to take that energy back into yourself so that you can then align with future opportunities, future, environments, people, in order to continue growing and evolving. And I think if we changed our relationship with endings, rather than it feeling like it's a failure, I think we've got this whole thing, it's like, oh, it's failure, you must have done something wrong. But actually, I like to think of it as more as completion. And when I think of attachments, it's like attachments are normal and like they're part of our humanness. But when we complete a cycle, right, like if we can look at those endings as completion, like then we've both taken everything that we can from that situation and we can move on. Doesn't mean that there won't be grief, there won't be sadness, there won't be a tinge of, reminiscing of old times, but it's necessary as part of our human evolution.
It's interesting, as you were speaking, I was taking in the feelings that I was getting. And in the beginning, it was a sense of emptiness. And then you're taking the energy back in with something, it's one of those metaphors, that we have different metaphors. That's not one of the metaphors I've ever used, but I probably will use it in the future because I sense that that's got power, probably to engage the Raphi cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost the visual I see is, I almost imagine it, right? And it wasn't until we started talking that I thought about it. It's like, okay, this was like energetic chords that I was energizing. So whether it's an old job, whether it's an old, an old place of living, an old friendship, and like things that you were energizing that once you were attached to. But I almost physically imagine like taking that energy back into myself. So the chords that I once energized, to say it was an old job, right? Like once I decide to leave, it's like, okay, I'm grateful, I'm thankful for what I've learned. I've extracted the learning. Now I'm going to cut that cord, take that energy back into myself, because that will help me charge, essentially, to be able to energize whatever wants to come next.
And it's a really good technique, I think, for any time we are hit by a sudden change. Change is, usually we assume the worst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us do, and I think it's about changing our relationship with change, which is a whole other topic in itself, right? I'm sure that's for our next podcast, but always got loads of episodes. So, but when it comes to attachments, what do you think that people struggle with the most in terms of moving on and letting go? What is it about letting go that people find so challenging, do you think?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, at the most fundamental level, people aren't introspective enough, generally speaking. Even introverts aren't using the time on the powerful computer that they've got there, kind of frittering it away on trivia. But here's this powerful computer that we've got, even more powerful than the cell phones we carry around. And when we have moments in which we're not working or doing something that absorbs us, we go into a default network. And in the default network, it's basically random, and it's random association. So you flit from one thing to another, to another, to another, which can lead you to an inspiration. I mean, it's not like the default network is always a bad thing.
Yeah.
But lots of the time, it's wasted time. You know, and the executive function, the self-awareness, the metacognition, being aware of what you are doing with yourself and making better use of it is a good thing, because then you can have a guided random walk, but it could be guided under some useful theme, like, am I feeling all the joy that I've ever felt before right now? And if not, why not? And you know, what can I do about it? I mean, that's a better way to use time than just sitting there and letting it do whatever it wants. And when you find yourself daydreaming, then again, when I find myself daydreaming, I say, well, okay, if I'm going to daydream, why don't I envision some almost impossible outcome for the rest of the day, impossibly good outcome. You know, if I have to daydream, why not daydream about something that might prepare me for, or get the universe to say, oh, he's not quite praying, but he's focusing on it, so maybe he wants it, maybe let's give it to him. Has he been a good boy? Yeah, he's been kind to people and so on. Here it is, Bill.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's almost the power of allowing yourself to dream, to think, to I guess imagine alternate like possibilities. But then you also said that we struggle with the attachments or letting go of attachments because of this fear of introspection, right? And it's interesting that we continue to circle back around to this, because it's true, right? Like when you don't have that job anymore, maybe you've got like that friendship is no longer in your life, maybe it's a certain family member, or it's I don't know, your kids have grown up, or like you're still connected, of course, right? You've always been connected through, you know, your past and through sharing different chapters of your life together, but it causes a space, right? And I think this circles back to me saying about age-appropriate toys. The letting go creates space, but that space is needed for the new toys to come to us, the new gifts, the new experiences. But our fear of introspection happens in the gap. It happens in the space. So we're actually scared of letting go. We hold on to things that we don't want to, because instead of fearing what's coming next, we fear the introspection. We fear the space. We fear what we might figure out about ourselves or what we might learn. And that really, yes, at the beginning, it's tough, right? And it's tough to continue to face yourself again and again and again in uncomfortable kind of depth, right? It's not always a comfortable process. I know for me, it's like, oh God, like a dagger to the heart, right? It's like having to continue to look at yourself in that depth and that color, if you like. But the more you do that, it's just like any skill, right? It's like maybe the first time we sat and filmed something in front of a camera. Okay, oh God, there's a camera there, right? But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I think that's the same with attachments and letting go, because the more you do that, the more you have that introspective time, the more you learn, oh, do you know what? I'm going to find something out about myself. So I can frame that as a good thing or a bad thing, right? It's not always easy, but if you frame it as a positive, I'm going to find something new out about myself. I'm going to learn, I'm going to evolve. And then also, we know that in that space, yes, we need to clear it. We're going to learn about ourselves. We're going to become somebody new. And then we also know that the new toys are coming. that follows afterwards. So the more we're able to recognize these cycles, the easier it becomes. But I think we fear taking that first loss, that first attachment, saying goodbye. It's like, but they say, like, you know, your first childhood like romance is the hardest one to let go of, right? Because it's the first time that you're going through that experience, or an experience of loss, right? And loss can look like anything. It doesn't need to just be that somebody has sadly passed. It can be loss of a job, loss of a friend. It can be so many things, right? But I find that that's interesting, that it's the fear that underpins it all is our fear of introspection.
It's true. In terms of loss, I was just getting the thought that it also includes loss of face, you know, humiliation. And that's attachment to other people's esteem, other people thinking well of us, you know, and therefore we present an image of who we want people to think we are, and so on. So all of that stuff is actually holding us back, and the skill sets that we're trying to share here that we've learned by being introspective, or at least open to self-awareness.
Yep.
I remember when we first met, you talked about getting messages from the body and paying attention to the body, not just the mind, that it's all one thing. And the fear of taking advantage of those skill sets, which are what's meant by resilience, you know, the ability to stand up to any possible event, no matter what it is, to be resilient. People are throwing away those skills and that resilience by the avoidance of self-awareness. I think that's tied to the acculturation of pessimism, essentially, and cynicism that people growing up get almost everywhere in the world today, maybe not out in the bush. The Aboriginal cultures probably haven't gotten to that problem yet, but we in the industrialized world have gotten ourselves into a mindset that denies the scientific possibility of God. Even though the science is supposed to be open-minded until you prove something. And God hasn't been disproven by science. It's just simply been ignored as, you know, beneath contempt, beneath need to experiment or study, because it's impossible. You know, oh yeah, it's unscientific, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, that's the attitude of most science. So that lack of trust for the universe, the lack of expectation that everything is going to be all right. It's all going to be taken care of. It's all benevolent. It's learning. We're learning. And where we are, the only way to learn really is by mistakes. And then we take the mistakes so seriously. We so overreact to the mistakes. Whereas if we were more open-minded about it and more self-aware, willing to be introspective, not afraid of what we're going to find in there, we would eventually start to sense that there is consciousness everywhere. We would sense we're not alone. There's consciousness in the room besides the three humans. That it's everywhere. Everything is conscious, and it's full of love. The whole universe is happening out of an outburst of love. To have more objects of love, more selves, instead of just one self to love, many selves to love, an infinite number of selves to love. And the love comes back through each of those selves and amongst them.
Yeah, so this is where it's linked to, so the pessimism, a lot of us default into, like, when we're in this gap, when we've lost and, you know, when we've had an attachment that we need to let go of, when we're in this gap, when we're in this introspective space, it's this kind of hardwired pessimism. And I understand, right, because I'm human, I go through it, like, as I'm sure you have, right? like, not all lessons are easy lessons to learn, right? They are painful. We are here for a human experience. So it's not about being perfect and being like, you know, everything's happy and rainbows and sunshine all the time. Sometimes the lessons are hard. They're really hard, right? And we are human and we are here for a human experience. So it's not saying, like, it's not saying, oh, we'll be happy about everything and everything's going to be fine and just ignore, right? Because that's avoidance, right? And I've learned over time there is a big difference between positive thinking and avoidance. Those are two different things, right? So I think it's important to process these human emotions. So even if you are feeling negative, feeling victimized, like, why me? That's not fair. You know, I've had all those things, right? And I'm sure everybody has. It's rather than accepting that as your final state of being and making that the lens in which you view the world through, it's about processing those emotions. So, okay, like, you had a really rough year, rough summer, rough, like, you know, rough few years, right? What is that emotion trying to teach you, right? I feel like life's not fair. Okay, well, what is it about you that makes you feel that? Oh, well, I didn't get the start that other people got. Okay, right, let's go into that further. And it is about the process, and we've talked about this before, the process of not avoiding these negative emotions, but processing them, understanding what's at the root of them, and then transmuting them. Because when we do that, yes, we're in a space of pessimism, right, when something bad or hard happens, but we then are able to extract the learning even from that negative and pessimistic emotion, so that overall our outlook is actually, we've transmuted this negativity into something positive, because that was a bad experience, that was a hard thing. What can I extract from this that will make it a positive experience? And that's the difference between just pretending it doesn't exist and everything's fine and putting a smile on, versus actually doing that deep work. And that's not easy, right? To ask yourself on so many different levels, like, well, what is it about me? Why did I react like that? What made me think that? But that process is what allows us to continue to have a positive outlook, even in a world that, you know, sends us trials and tribulations constantly. And I think this is where, now linking back round to faith, right, which is what you've talked about. And I know for me, that personally helps me get through those hard times, those hard chapters, because yes, we learn, like for me anyway, like you learn that every time you create a gap, something new will come, you'll learn something new, right? And I believe that the new experiences will align with who you've become. But also it is that faith that continues to keep me going when things are hard and difficult. And I think if more people were open to the idea, like, of whatever you want to call this human experience, if you were more open to the idea that things were unfolding for you, it was for your ultimate highest and best, if you had that kind of faith kind of like running through you almost, it makes the hard chapters and the letting go of attachments much easier.
Totally agree. And so my recommendation to all of you people is, at the end of each day, we all hit the pillow, our heads, our eyes closed, nobody's going to interrupt us. That's a good time to introspect about, what should I have done differently today? What did I do today that's irritating me, that it wasn't the right thing to do? And so next time, what should I do next time this situation occurs? And so if you clean it out every day, it doesn't accumulate, and it's a moment of opportunity. Nobody's going to distract you. It's maybe the only time all day that you've got that isolation and, you know, the space to do work on yourself. And then again, suggesting if you don't have right now any sense that God exists, you could have faith in that. Or you could trust the benevolence of the universe, that the universe is happening. We know that. And we're here, and we're having these experiences, and we're part of the universe. We could either assume that it's random accident, or we could assume that there's some integrity to it and some purpose to it, and that if it's not benevolent, we could be squashed like a bug at will. Then, the situation is pretty hopeless, and might as well, stop living right now. But if that isn't, a certainty that it's possible that God loves us, and that maybe God is us looking out through all of our eyes, then you can trust the benevolence at least until it does something to you that proves that it doesn't exist. Give it the benefit of the doubt until it stabs you in the back, if it ever does. My bet is that it's not going to stab you in the back. It hasn't stabbed me in the back. But moreover, if you follow this path of self-awareness, you eventually become so aware that you're aware of the God self within us, and you make contact with God as a reality. And after that point, it isn't faith or trust, it's knowing. And you can't just tell that to people, they have to reach it themselves. But they're not going to reach it if they don't do self-awareness to begin with.
Yeah. When you were talking there about trust, it's like, give trust until there's a reason not to trust, right? And I think this sparks something in me, because a lot of us are like, oh, well, no, trust needs to be earned, right? In all respects, and I kind of get both like sides to that argument, because I've given trust freely before and then got burned, right? And then you're like, okay, maybe I need to be a little bit more careful, right? But I think this comes down to like extracting the lessons, and like don't build a wall so high that you can't feel anything, right? Like sometimes we built walls for our protection, but those walls also stop us feeling the positive emotions. So it's like, yeah, if you got burnt, you build a wall, right? That's automatic, because you're like, okay, well, I don't want to make that same mistake again, right? But actually, in time, if you're able to extract the learning and understand, okay, well, what do I need to do next time to ensure that I do not get burnt or don't feel those same emotions. But that doesn't mean like keeping a wall up forever, because if you keep the wall up forever, then you're never going to feel, you won't feel bad, but you also won't feel good either, right? And I think that's important. So it's, when we think about trust, it's like, yes, give trust willingly, but also protect yourself too. And I think that that's something that I've learned over time too. It's like you can be too free, too giving, too everything, right? So it's that balance between like trusting until people give you a reason not to trust, but also at the same time protecting yourself too, right? So it's I like to think of, rather than protection, I like to think of it as like, don't abandon oneself, right? Because in order for you to reach these states in which you've talked about, right, which is deeper than a faith, it's accessing our higher version of ourselves, we need to be able to pour into ourselves and protect ourselves ultimately, so that we can reach these higher states of consciousness and reach that higher self that is within us all the time, right? And for me, I know that I access that to access, information around, okay, like processing the day. And you can process whether that's, asking yourself these self-reflective questions at night. It could be journaling in the morning. I know for me, that's what I like to do. And it's not necessarily every day, but every couple days. But that is, for me, accessing the higher self, right, that is within. But in order to do that, you do need to be able to pour into yourself enough that you're able to access these states. So I always think it's never really black and white, is it? It's always this, we live more in the grey. But I think understanding the nuances, and when you're on this journey yourself, it's not always easy to articulate, but you'll know when you're starting to access it, because you feel that connection that maybe you didn't once feel. And then from there, everything becomes easier.
And this communal negativity also is part of a larger shutdown of systems within ourself. And the main problem is this black and white thing. Everything has to be black or white, that's it. So you have to quickly get past any cognitive dissonance in the moment by quickly labeling good or bad. And it's never one black or white. It's always gray. And we have to adapt second by second and make adjustments. You can't just lay down a firm principle that this is the way it always works. No, you have this balance between excessive severity and excessive mercy. Not trusting anybody, trusting everybody. Obviously, if you trust everybody, you're going to trust people who are out to gyp you, and not everybody is in a higher state of consciousness. In fact, most of us are in the lowest possible state of consciousness, and that's what we're talking about, is how to get out of that. So you can't trust people who are in a low state of consciousness, so that means you can't trust the average person that you're dealing with. But that doesn't mean you have to distrust every single thing that they do. You can start by knowing that you can't go all the way in trusting them continuously in everything. Trust them as much as possible under the circumstances. Yeah. And then if you sense that they're trying to pick your pocket, okay, there's a piece of evidence there. We have to change the way I'm behaving now.
Yeah. Extracting the learning, and this is the important part for me. It's like you need to stay aware of actions, right? Because actions speak 1,000 words, right? You need to, you can't believe that everybody views the world as perhaps you do, right? And I think that's important. But to kind of get back to this black or white, either or, right? I think of that a lot, right? And I think of that if we circle back round to attachments, which is where we started, right? It's like, I think we have this either or mindset when it comes to attachments too. It's like, either I can be attached to this person, that we can, maintain our, friendship, relationship, maybe it's job, work, professional, whatever it is, right? We can have this attachment, or it's lost, we're never going to see it ever again, that's it, dead, buried, done, right? And I think that either or mentality, that black or white mentality, makes the letting go harder, right? Because it's almost like we've told ourselves, I'm never going to see this person again, I'm never going to have this opportunity to be in this town again, I'm never going to be able to come past this work environment again, have this same level of camaraderie and togetherness again. When we tell ourselves all those things, that it needs to be one or the other, that makes the letting go even harder. So I think what we're circling back round to magically is what if letting go wasn't an either or? What if it could be an and? What if you can let go and still have hope for the future? What if you can let go and still want the best for that person, that place, that environment? What if you can let go and still wish love, or send love to everything and everyone? Why does it need to be, oh, it's awful, we've fallen out, or it ended? Again, It's completion for now. Doesn't mean that it'll be done forever. Could just be a chapter. And I think that if we were to embrace more of an and mindset rather than either or, that would help with attachments, and that would help us move into higher states of consciousness and continue our growth and evolution as well.
Tremendous. Love that. To correct something I said, a moment ago I said everyone is in the lowest possible state of consciousness. That was kind of a joke. The situation is very malleable. As you talk to somebody who might, in the beginning of the conversation, be in a very low state of consciousness, they might come back up quickly to a higher state of consciousness just by the conversation. And all of us have the ability to get into the highest state of consciousness, even if today that seems impossible. All of you people out there suffering from depression, anxiety, something like 30% of the US population has been medically prescribed drugs for those conditions. 30%, 1 out of 3 people, almost. You can't picture yourself rising into a higher state of consciousness, but it's a millimeter away. It's only a millimeter away. You just have to go in and talk to yourself in a brand new way. It doesn't have to use words either. Communicate with yourself in an wholly new way. Be more aware of what is going on inside of you. Listen, look inside of you. It's only a millimeter away and shrinking. It's going away as we speak.
I think that's an important place, I think, maybe to wrap up today is you do have the ability inside you to access everything. It all exists right now. And that shift is manageable. It might feel unmanageable right now, right? But we've said this before, but even if you don't believe it's manageable right now, can you remain curious or open to the fact that it could be possible? And I think that's a really important point to remember. Like, it's possible for all of us. Like, even if you're listening to this is a sign that you're already, doing this kind of, if you found this work, then it's a sign that you're on that journey already. And we are all just one decision, one thought, one action away from a completely different life. So, Bill, thank you so much for a wonderful episode today, all about attachments. Any final closing remarks you want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
I think those final words that you said, that it's happening already. If they're watching this, they've already been sucked into the vortex. Welcome to our vortex.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. Well, thank you so much, dear listeners, for enjoying and spending time with us for another hour this month. We'll be back next month with episode 23. Have a wonderful day. Bye.